many talented people with interesting journeys on how to break into tech. And we've curated this panel so that you can get a snapshot of it. This panel will be moderated by Mohamed, Malik, but shout out to Taz, who actually did all the hard work to curate the questions and put it together. So I'll invite the panel onto the stage.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. On that side? Cool. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. How's everyone doing? This is the session just before lunch, a very, very important session, as we've heard from Shaf, the importance of, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, very familiar faces in the audience, of us to break into tech, as many more Muslims, inshallah ta'ala, to change the narratives that we see in AI and fast and across the domains as well. So, jazakallah khair. Okay, so I'm Mohamed Malik. I'm a non-techie. I'm a generalist. I'm a startup incubation specialist, and I work as a coach and mentor to early-stage founders. I'm joined here by an all-star panel. We're going to be talking about how to break into tech and the respective journeys of these incredible people, inshallah. So we're going to go with the intros, inshallah, if I can start with you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Ramla. I work at Accenture as a product designer. Do you want to keep it brief?
Yeah, and we'll break into more detail later on, inshallah.
Awesome.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Faisa, and I am, by day, a community manager at Site Improve, and then all the other time, I'm also the co-founder of Somalis in Tech.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Inaya. I'm a product data analyst that is also studying a degree apprenticeship at Dojo Tech.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Furquan, and I currently work as a product designer at Meta or Facebook. I'm currently designing the future of the workplace.
Oh, brilliant. So if you can get a bit more of a breakdown in terms of starting with you, Furquan, inshallah, in terms of how, your journey into tech. Give us a synopsis, inshallah.
Yeah, I guess it was more unconventional back when I started. I actually went to go to university to do a degree, but I was like one grade short, and I found out about this opportunity of a degree apprenticeship. And it was at Ford, and the way it works is you go to university once a week, and then 4 days you spend at the company, and they pay for the degree as well as government funded. And I spent 6 years there, 2 years as a software engineer, then I did 4 years as product design. And then I realized, actually, I've always wanted to work for a big tech company, and thanks to having an amazing network around me and mentors, I was able to move there like just over 18 months ago. And yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm enjoying it a lot there.
So my journey into tech also wasn't traditional, and it actually started off with a K-drama. Who here watches K-dramas? I know there's a couple people. There we go. So I watched the K-drama Startup, and I went to my computer science teacher, and I'd done computing A-levels. So when I went to my computing teacher, I was like, "Sir, I really want to have a hackathon. Please, can we have a hackathon?" And he set one up with a company, Dojo Tech. And I promise I had no choice in the judging, but our team ended up winning, and I was offered an internship at my company. And so while I was there doing my internship, I actually tried to look for a really easy way to get myself known. Now, keep in mind that I didn't think that I'd be returning to this company. I thought it'd be a 2-week internship, and then I'm going to leave, make a few networks here and there. So I embarrassed myself slightly. I put my QR code with my LinkedIn profile on the coffee bar, which is a shared social space, and it ended up drumming quite a bit of attention because it's a scale-up, it's a relatively small company, and everyone kind of knows each other. So I ended up, from there, building a network of where I was able to talk to CTOs, CEOs, and to get that advice from them, which was honestly so invaluable, and that has led me to my journey into tech today. I initially was actually going to go into medicine, and I decided to change last minute because I thought, you know what, I prefer programming. So yeah, that's about it.
Doctor, that's what I was told as you're growing up.
My mum's there. You could ask her about the medicine journey.
I was told as well. But yeah, go ahead and your journey as well, inshallah.
So, is my mic working? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, now I can hear myself. So, I actually didn't aspire to go into tech originally. All throughout uni, I watched Mad Men, and that is basically what I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to be in advertising, I wanted to be in the creative world, but more specifically around audience research and stuff, because I just loved people, and I did culture and identity as a degree, and I just love to understand what brings people together, what captures people's attention. So after leaving uni, I got a really great internship at a couple advertising agencies, but what happened was the ad world chewed me up and spat me out. And I think that tends to happen, especially in spaces where the folks are quite privileged and come from a very different background. And I, myself, being working class, Muslim, Somali, and so on and so forth, like, I really struggled in that world because everyone really grew up so differently to what I did. And so I just felt like I was constantly catching up. And then it came to a point where there was redundancies, and then I was made redundant. And that was really hard. Like, that was like my first year out of uni. Like, being made redundant so quickly was really difficult. So I was just looking for any job at that point. And then I saw a community operations role at Bumble. And I was just like, okay, let me just take this job and then see how I can get back into ad land. And then I was exposed to the world of tech, the world of product managers, the world of engineers, the world of tech marketing teams and legal teams, and just like really opening my mind to the non-tech world. And actually there's more non-tech jobs in tech than there is actual technical roles. And I saw the potential and the money, but I saw the potential as well. So I saw the potential as well. So then I really looked at my current role, which is more operational, policy making, which was really interesting. But outside of that, I was in amongst communities anywhere. And then I come to realize, hey, actually, community management sounds like a path I want to go on. And no one knows what community management is. But think about the folks who put this thing together today. In effect, I just do that for companies with their user bases or customer bases. It's really fun. Like, everyone sees me as having the fun job. Like, all I have to do is just bring people together,
it's critical,
facilitate.
though, isn't it? Critical,
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I don't have the pressures of being revenue generative, so that's great. I'm all about people giving good feedback about their experience, which is really good. So I've basically from there moved on to Peanut, which is an app for mothers, and then from there was at Meta, which was probably like the biggest responsibility to date, having to look after their developer circles program, which spanned across 100,000 developers across the world. And I looked after those in the EMEA region, which really opened my eyes, especially working very closely with those developers in the Middle East and Africa, and really giving them everything that they could possibly need. I wanted to squeeze Meta for all they had to give as much as possible back to those people, especially those people who are struggling. One of my favorites is actually this woman. She was in Gaza, and like we'd always try to meet up and whenever she could get electricity, and she was just one of the most determined people I've ever met, and honestly reminds me why I do the community work that I do. It's just the way I see it, community in tech is being that bridge between tech and the people. So yeah, and now I'm at Site Improve, working, which is a SaaS company on accessibility software. So yeah, as you can see, it's always been typically mission driven, and that's generally how I like to be. And then outside of that, I realize I'm really rabbiting on. Outside of that, I've also, glutton for punishment, I created my own community outside of work, which is called Somalis in Tech. Put your hands up if you're part of Somalis in Tech. We've got some Somalis in Tech people in the house. We show up. Yeah, these people show up and they show out. So so I'm really, really proud of our community. We've currently got about over 3,000 people since launching in December 2020, which has been incredible from all over the globe. We're a nomadic culture, and I just love creating that visibility and representation and upskilling people along the way. So we're really good friends with the folks at Islamic Makers as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Inshallah, we'll definitely want to talk more about these support networks as well, but inshallah, Ramla, your journey would be great to hear, inshallah.
Definitely, thank you. Kind of similar to everyone else on the panel, I had a really untraditional route. So similar to Inaya, I wanted to do medicine. I studied biomedical sciences at uni. In sixth form, I dedicated so much energy and time. I even did the UK CAT test at some point. That's how dedicated I was to medicine. But also being a bit of an overachiever and not being able to say no to things. When I started uni, I came across Code First Girls web development course. So I thought, I'm doing biomed. Its first year is very similar to A-levels. I'm finding this quite boring. Let me try a bit of web development. I think it was one of the first times I'd heard about tech. So I gave that a go. It was a bit interesting, but wasn't my vibe, looking at a dark screen with white lettering, a bit more creative than that. And someone I was working with as a student said to me, hey, do you want to come to this Women in STEM, Women in Tech event? And I said, sure, again, because I don't have to say no. So I went, and then I spoke to a bunch of different people, and their roles seemed really interesting. But the biggest theme, I think, was, what is tech? Everyone keeps saying, I'm in tech, I work in tech. And I thought, what is that tech? Like, what are you doing day to day? What is it? And someone was like, I do software engineering. Like, I kind of tried that, I don't like it. What else do you do? I'm a software engineer. Okay, what else? So I'd speak to someone else, like, yeah, I work in tech. Again, getting really itchy and irritated. So I started to go to loads of different events while I was in uni, again, as a way to procrastinate my studying. So I went to an intro to UX design, I went to intro to coding. I think I did an idea hackathon on how you can apply tech to communities. And so throughout that time, I realized, okay, I'm interested in tech. I'll continue figuring out what that means. And then in my second year, I had a bit of a crisis, because that's when you start deciding, it's almost third year, I might have to start applying for jobs. I have to probably apply for the UK CAT again. What do I want to do with my life? And I had a mentor in finance, in auditing, completely irrelevant. So I said to her, what should I do? I don't know what to do. I'm having a panic. And she said, just keep going, put energy into both, and eventually you'll figure it out. And so it was a lot of tawakkul, a lot of asking Allah, what should I do? I'm really confused. And I'm the kind of person who likes to know what I'm doing. I don't like to just go with the flow all the time. And so in the kind of energy of trying different things, I came across Accenture's, it was called Tech Visionaries, where it's essentially a 4-day event where you do a bit of a hackathon, but it's also an assessment period, and they'll see if they want you to join. And I did that in my third year in April, just before my exams, because I was procrastinating heavily. And alhamdulillah, it worked out. And so that's how I got into Accenture almost 4 years ago. But the journey hadn't ended. Now I'm in a tech role, but I still don't know what I want to do. So my first project, I don't know if you're familiar with tech consulting, you're not doing just one job. You do different projects, and they vary from a couple of weeks to months to years. And so my first project, I joined in 2019, just before COVID, and there were barely any projects going around. It was the Hunger Games, and we took whatever we got. And so my first role was in sales enablement. So for anyone that's also not in an engineering tech role, you are in tech, you're doing a tech role. Please remove software engineering from tech. So I did sales enablement, where we worked with different companies wanting to partner with Accenture and create a bit of a sales pipeline, kind of train people, kind of grow the company within Accenture. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not good with rejection. If someone says no, I will not talk to you again. And with sales, you need to be really persistent. So I did that for 10 months, and I realized this is not for me. I don't like it. But I'm very much of the belief that you try something, and if you don't like it, it's still a success, because you know you won't go back to it. My next role was in agile business analysis, project management, with a different client. And it was interesting. I did a bit of data visualization on Excel. I did project management, kind of chasing people up. But again, you've probably realized by now I'm a master procrastinator. Chasing people up when I'm a bit behind was a bit daunting. It was a really interesting role, but again, it wasn't for me, so I said no thanks. And I looked for my next role. And again, trying to figure out what people do. Accenture is an awesome place. Again, tech consulting is an awesome place in terms of figuring out what you want to do. And we'll probably speak about it a bit later, but you don't always have to know what you want to do. It's good to just try things and kind of cross it off your list and try something else. Throughout my Accenture journey, I've been doing a lot of work on accessibility in tech, and then I came in to see more about accessibility and design, and I'd started speaking to a design leader who wanted to get my team in accessibility to introduce her team to accessibility and design. And through learning that is where I came across in a bit more detail UX design. Looking into user research, I felt there were some synergies in my biomedical science background. And so I did a role in conversational AI as a conversation designer, really enjoyed it. And then I ended up doing that for almost 2 years. Really cool, kind of looking at language, looking at people's experiences. We all had really painful experiences with chatbots, trying to figure out who's actually going to use this. It was a government project. Thinking about people's benefits, for example, where they're kind of the most vulnerable in society. You don't want them having a nightmare experience with the chatbot. So what are the vulnerabilities? What are the pitfalls? What are the most important things that people are saying? And kind of similar to what was happening in the previous talk with the risk test, looking at having really quality data and looking at how people speak so that we train the chatbot on the right kind of words so that it can pick up the most important parts of what people are saying rather than causing that frustration. So that's what I've been doing. Product design, conversation design.
Appreciate you, Jazakallah khair. And just learning from your journeys, right? I remember Furquan seeing you at BC before Corona in a Islamic Makers event, and yourself, Faisa, as well. We met prior to COVID, and it's beautiful hearing your journeys now, subhanAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you focused and, inshallah, socially impact focused and keep you progressing along that journey, inshallah. So what are some things that you could share? Because Muslims, tech, it's often, there's barriers internally. We spoke a little bit about that, and there's also things external to us. It could be societal, it could be tradition, it could be cultural. So I want to pick your brains, if I may, in terms of what are those barriers maybe you faced in your lived experience or anecdotally that you've seen around yourself, for Muslims in particular, and how might we overcome those barriers to get into tech, whatever that means, inshallah. If I may start with you, Ramla, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of barriers, again, I promise I'm not recruiting for Accenture, but it's, alhamdulillah, we're lucky that we have a really diverse community, and since I've joined, we've grown there's a really big Muslim presence, big Muslim community, alhamdulillah, but then we also started growing our Somali community, and I think the biggest things that we faced as people has been most commonly, when you're in a tech consulting environment, it's very cutthroat. People are really competitive. And so it's not really a space for humility. And as people, we kind of grow up to be quite humble. We're kind of told, don't kind of be too proud about what you're doing. So kind of balancing that with also, how do I be a self-promoter? How do I make sure people know what I'm doing and not think of it as boasting? So that's been my biggest barrier, I think, kind of keeping track of all the good things that I'm doing, any good feedback I get, documenting it, and then kind of saying, look, do you know what, I'm actually quite good. In terms of, I think it might be quite different for other people, but alhamdulillah, we have like a prayer space and people organize Jummah and stuff like that. But I think it's just more kind of the traits and the personality that has been. That's
a pertinent reminder. I think me and Arfa used to talk about this a lot in terms of how my first mentor, Ambreen Khan, a partner at Deloitte, who just took me under her wing, she would say that the difference she sees between Muslims and non-Muslims is just that the non-Muslims seem to say it with chest, whatever they're saying. When they're pitching an idea, this is the number one idea. Like, this is, I'm backed by whatever it is. But, subhanAllah, I couldn't have said it better, mashallah. It's just that saying it with chest, inshallah, and having that confidence. You have a Lord whose doors, who can open up any doors. He has the keys to the heaven and the earth, inshallah. And Faisa, would love to hear from you. What barriers and how would you overcome them? Any advice for our audience?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing is mostly around the missions of the companies that you're going to. Tech obviously really, really impacts the world, perhaps more than most industries do. So as a Muslim in particular, it's like, how do I want my work to contribute to this world? And there had been workplaces I've been at where I found that conflict really difficult. And then kind of looking beyond that and making decisions, looking for jobs, having to be picky sometimes in a world where there isn't a lot of opportunities as well. Especially right now, like there's obviously with all the layoffs, the job market's inflated with so much talent, and then there's just not as much jobs to kind of service that talent. It's really, really hard to really kind of remain strong, especially in your iman and like your faith and everything like that. So it's like, I feel like I've always been brought back to it though. It's like just kind of always questioning myself. Why am I here? Why do I want to do this? How does this contribute back to my values, my morals, and what mark I want to leave in this lifetime, right? So, for example, when I was at Meta, I really struggled at Meta, if I'm honest. I think just culturally, I was literally reading about my company on the news. And I think I really struggled with that at the time. But then what was really nice to see at Meta was just like, there's like ERGs of other Muslims, and like we actually talk to each other. There's groups of there was a Somali group at Facebook. Oh my gosh, that was so new to me. And I also met another girl called Faisa there. That was also new to me. But yeah, like I think it's seeing your people and like getting to have those open conversations, and I think a lot of the time the stories that are surfaced are the ones that's like, I'm the first whatever. But actually, it's actually really important to also talk about when you are around your people, around fellow Muslims, around other people that identify with you culturally, just how freeing and relaxing and nice that feels. And I think that's something we should definitely strive towards. So yeah, I think that was how I kind of resolved some of that conflict, was actually just reaching out to people who looked like me, lived a life like me, and that was really, really nice experience. And they really hold you accountable as well. And I think having that accountability, especially in tech, like I feel like you can't really talk to your families properly about your job because they don't get it. So they don't really understand like the weight of the stuff that you're dealing with. So yeah, from there, and especially the work I was doing at Meta was super, super important. Obviously developing and impacting the lives of developers all over the world. So that, alhamdulillah, that was such a great opportunity, getting to bring those kind of opportunities to those folks and invest in those folks. But yeah, that was probably the time I had the biggest struggle, for sure. And actually that was, you know what, that's when I built Somalis in Tech.
Oh, wow.
So during my time then, when I was kind of going through that inner conflict, like it really spurred me on to like do something, like and feel it. You can't always resolve your current situation, but what you can do is kind of look beyond that and see, okay, how else can I kind of fulfill those needs, and to which Somalis in Tech was born alongside my co-founders. And alhamdulillah, I've really felt so fulfilled since. So yeah.
Allahumma barik. It's almost like that thing, the dots only join when you look backwards. Like, why was this happening? Out of that was born Somalis in Tech. And when you talked about the why, subhanAllah, I remember coming across a blog around, we all have this collective why. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Yeah? We are created only to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what is our specific purpose in our roles? You know, we are almost the decider of that, right? What is our specific thing that we can give back to society, to the wider humanity, inshallah. There were very, very pertinent points that you mentioned there. I'd love to hear from Inaya yourself in terms of what barriers and how did you overcome them. We'd love to hear as well, inshallah.
So initially, when I joined my workplace, I was one of the only Muslims there, and I was the only hijabi. And even though I didn't want that to define me, it kind of did, in a sense, as in people would view me in a way that was quite interesting, I'd say. But then they got to know me and then they realised I'm just normal like them. Surprise, surprise. Anyways, so one thing that I did to really help me to overcome that is to show people via my character and via my actions that Muslims are just the same as everyone else, and that we are inviting and that we can do things. But talking about invites, there's a lot of socials. This is such a big problem. I'm sure a lot of you share the same frustrations. There's a lot of socials that include alcohol, that include going to bars. There was a joke about going to a bar. People have invited me to go to a bar and I just look at them with a blank stare. I'm like, come on, guys, let's be real. I'm not doing that. So yeah, there's a lot of things where some people don't know. They don't know that Muslims don't drink. Although you might think, oh, that's so obvious. Like, what are the two things that your non-Muslim friends know about Muslims? Oh, they don't drink, they don't eat pork. Two things that I've been told. But yeah, so by making it known and holding on to my moral values, by making it known that I'm not going to go to these events, it has created so much room for different conversations. Muslims aren't the only people that don't drink. We have a sober social society that has been created based off of these conversations.
Oh, wow.
And based off of people sharing the same experiences. And I think that was amazing. Like, we had a terrarium making workshop and it was so relaxing and calming and just a lovely, wholesome environment. And that's something that I would implore all of you guys to do within your workplaces. Another thing is, we never had a prayer room. We had, well, my workplace is mainly built with glass meeting rooms, which is a bit of a problem. So we had like one screen covering it, but people used to double book the meeting rooms during Salah times, and that was becoming a real big problem. And I mentioned it to HR in a general conversation. I was saying that I didn't feel comfortable. And I proposed my own solution to it, because they were saying, oh, we'll keep the room free. But I said, let's use this corner. We have a corner of the office. It's a massive space. So we blocked it off and we created our own little prayer corner. And from then, more Muslims have joined and people do use it. And also it teaches those around us that we're serious about what we're talking about. And that Salah times are serious. Another thing that I do within my Google Calendar is that I block off my Salah times. So I'll literally put like Dhuhr, it will only take like 5 minutes, Asr. And it's really nice just have that reminder. And that's something that I would also encourage you guys to do as well at work. So then you have that reminder. One thing that one of my friends said to me is, oh, don't you feel uncomfortable having that within your calendar? And I said, no, like people go off for 5-minute smoke breaks. Why should I be ashamed of going off for praise Salah? Like this is a conversation between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. My success is only by Allah. It's not by anyone else. And just to build off of all of your points, to be honest, your actions are by your intentions. We all know that hadith, إِنَّمَا عَمَلْ بِالنِّيَّةِ. If you go into something and you do it with the correct intentions, you could be rewarded for things, even if it counts, even if it's software engineering. God, we could be coding for the right reasons. Even if it's data analytics, like you could get rewards for that. Every step that you take could be you becoming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And perhaps you'll become a beacon for Islam and you will show others about how Muslims actually are and they'll become interested in Islam. There's so many people that have had conversations with me about it and they're genuinely curious, which is something that's so lovely, like cultivating that environment for people to learn and to grow. I think it's really important. So yeah.
SubhanAllah. Just wanted to plug one thing. In terms of the calendar hack, Iqbal Naseem on his website and a few others, I think they've got this plug-in. You can live updates, London prayer times, bang into your calendar. Manager says, well, Gwan, are you free for a moment? I'm sorry, you got Salah right now. It's such an amazing hack, and what you mentioned, subhanAllah, beautiful, love it. And Furquan, over to you, man.
Yeah, I think there's a few main points which I'd say are centered around like self-worth and like imposter syndrome, and as well as when I started the apprenticeship, I was quite young, and I think at the time at Ford, I was like leading designs, like creating a whole delivery network. I was led a 0 to 1 project for like this app called Ford Pass Pro, created the design systems, led certain features. But at a young age, you're like, wow, like maybe they're just doing this because they don't have enough resource or something, not because you're actually good enough. But I think when it comes to like, the imposter syndrome stuff, it's like you don't really see a lot of people around you. But I think before that, you have to realize, first of all, are you actually good enough? And then I think you have to, first of all, like nothing's a given. Like you can't just be like, in terms of like diversity and quotas, like they're not just there for like numbers to make up, right? You have to believe that the people go through these extensive interviews for big tech, like 6-7 interviews. It's very intensive, right? But you have to believe that you are good enough and you're not just making up numbers, first of all. But if you are doing all the small things, then the big things can happen. And then for me, that was having like mentors around me. Like, for example, I remember having this call with like Murtaza, BC, like before COVID, like talking to these guys, like showing my work. They're like, wow, like genuinely, like your work's very good. Like, wow, you like led this delivery network. It's like, why don't you apply for like Meta? I'm like, oh no, maybe I need to do a bit more. And then he introduced me to other mutual connections that he had at TransferWise, like Wise Today. And there's this lady called like Jeannie, there's like this other guy called France, and they looked at my work like, yeah, dude, like your stuff's like serious, like you can actually apply for this. Yeah. And it's a 6 interview process, right, for these roles, and then you need that help and support around you. And when you do them and practice them, it does take a lot of time and effort, but when someone in that company like tells you you're good enough, it's a different feeling. Like honestly, like you just wake up knowing like, yeah, I can actually do this. Or like when you work every single day in a company like Ford, like isn't as like tech oriented at the time, but I was like, oh, maybe my work isn't like on the same level as those guys. But when you have people that actually tell you that are more senior, like it's a different feeling. And it's so important to have those mentors around you that are doing things that you're aspiring to do. And I'll be honest, like when I turned up to like these Figma design events, or there was like like Islamic Makers had a few events as well, but there's other tech events you want to go to, and you don't see as many people around you like doing this stuff in the senior. And then until you see that, and those people like connect with you, then you're like, wow, I can actually do this. And then the whole age thing, I think if you're young but you're actually good enough, like it should be a meritocracy, but realistically it isn't. But like, don't let the whole age thing, like at 24, like joining Meta, like doing like senior work, like if you're good enough, like people respect you there. Like honestly, it is a very nice feeling. And like today, obviously there's people that are similar ages to me, and like that's not something I have to think about anymore. But I think like when I was younger in my career, like you had like, oh wait, do you want to help these interns out? Do you want to like take them under your wing? I'm like, some of these guys are like older than me as well. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think those are the main things, and like genuinely the mentors around you, like I can't like hold them to a high enough degree of how much like that confidence that changed me with those people inside, like honestly.
On that point, I wanted to ask Furquan, who do you look up to? And I would love to ask everyone else as well, inshallah, in terms of, talk about mentoring. How did you go about finding a mentor? We obviously got a platform, Islamic Makers as well. I'm a mentor as well for early stage startups, so I'd love to hear from you, Furquan, man. Who is there that you look up to, and why, and a bit about mentoring as well, and how that helped you?
Yeah, 100%. Like I mentioned, like Murtaza first of all, and he like introduced me to like other mentors. But I think it's like that saying, like it takes a whole village to raise a kid. Like for me, that's just saying that with my career, there's not one person, but it's like internally. I think my mentor, like she's for example, she's like Chinese background, and she's like got crazy experience like Google and stuff like this. But there's like you said, like there's a mentor platform that you just have to reach out and be proactive to people, because you might not need just one mentor, you might need like multiple to help you out. In terms of looking out to like one person, to be honest, I wouldn't say there isn't like one I look up to. Like there's various people throughout your life that you look out for, like different things, like your mum, for example, like when it comes to like things at home, or like your brothers, like got very like helpful things that you can help you out with. And then there's different things when it's career-wise, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't say there's like one explicit person, but when I've gone to Meta, I've realized how diverse the workforce is. Most people aren't actually from the UK there. Like most of them are sponsored visas, and they try to obviously like recruit as like the best talent possible. That's what they say, right? But I think obviously it's nice to have a Muslim mentor, but then I think just having that person that's just more senior ahead of you, that's all you need really, and just being humble with that, regardless of what their background or like where they're from and stuff. But I wouldn't say there's like one explicit, you have to have like multiple people for specific things, you know.
I'd love to open it up to everyone else. Any thoughts on that? How do we find that support in terms of a mentor or a person? Feel free to chip in. Any thoughts? So, Ramla, go ahead.
Quickly talk about it. I agree, definitely. There isn't just one person that will help you in your career. There may be people who aren't in the same field as you, but can help you in kind of attaining leadership roles or creating a career roadmap and how you can kind of navigate speaking to different leadership. One person I really look up to, I hope I'm doing her name justice, Sarah Suwidan. She's on Twitter. She's a Muslim hijabi based in Lebanon, and she creates really cool accessibility kind of courses and material. And she's someone I follow quite closely as a Muslim woman, creating a space for herself. In terms of looking for mentors, there's loads of different places. I think the main thing is not being shy. Go on LinkedIn, go to, kind of, if you have Twitter, reach out, go to these spaces, Islamic Makers, Deen Developers, Somalis in Tech. A lot of people are willing to support you. They don't have to be like 10, 15 years older than you. They can be someone who might just be 1 year ahead of your career. There may be peers that are on a similar journey as you that you can kind of lean on to keep each other accountable. People that have helped me in my current role has been at work, we have people called people leads or career counselors, and they're the kind of people that you catch up with regularly. You set some goals, stuff like objective key results. So what do I want to do this quarter or this year? How do I know that I've achieved these goals? Who can I reach out to help me reach those goals? How do I hold myself accountable? And then kind of doing that regularly without putting too much pressure on yourself, but being ambitious really helps. But I think the key thing is don't be shy, reach out to people. The worst they'll say is no, and you are already at that space anyway, so you try the next person. That would be my key point. Perfect.
And Faisa, a little bit, same question, but a little bit more about kind of maybe networks like Somalis in Tech, for example, Deen Developers. Shout out to them. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yes. So probably unsurprisingly, I personally struggle with like one-to-one mentorships for myself, just because in nature I'm just in amongst communities all the time. So I guess it kind of you have to think about the spaces that you're in and what you're exposed to, and to think about what your needs actually are. So for a lot of people, mentoring is really beneficial. Something that will be launching at Somalis in Tech as well, after much demand. I'm really looking forward to doing that. But the other values that I'd probably implore people to think about is like allyship, and like as well as you can kind of have unofficial mentors without having so much of the commitment of a mentor. Mentoring scares a lot of people, mentor and mentee alike. It just feels very formal, and it feels like, oh, I have to dedicate this time. And I've had a lot of like unofficial mentors. They didn't agree to be my mentor, but I made them mine anyway. That I kind of call upon for certain periods of times, depending on what kind of things I'm dealing with. And that's okay. And actually, one time I was speaking with Abi Mohamed, I think. Yeah.
Shut up.
Love Abi.
YS.
And I think I was talking to her about kind of like a mentoring situation. She was like, I'm your friend, okay? We don't have to have a mentor thing going on here. I could just be your friend, and that's okay as well. Like, these people being in your network and even being your friend is also kind of like that. It captures those values of mentoring that you need. So I guess it's like really important to think about what are those values, and how can you find them in the different people that you come across each day. I got plenty of people to call up about when community things arise, career situations arise, salary negotiations arise, especially kind of representing, like, being a woman in tech, a Muslim in tech, and Somalis in tech definitely holds me account. Like, I'm so lucky to have that community. I use it just as much as the participants do. So selfishly, maybe I create it for myself. But yeah, no, it's a really great resource, and we hope to continue to bring actual organised programming to kind of facilitate and hold those spaces. Not everybody feels comfortable with like self-advocating and like saying what you need, even knowing what you need, right? It's really hard to know those things. So I think it's about creating those spaces so those things can kind of flourish and be created. And honestly, we do take so much inspiration by our friends at Dean Developers and Islamic Makers who are way further down. They're our mentors. Like, there you go. They're our mentors. Like, looking at what's going on today, inshallah, honestly, this is the dream for us. So thank you so much to our friends over at Islamic Makers. So, yeah, that's definitely why.
Pretty much. I'm taking a leaf out of Inaya's page as well, where there's no such thing, then you can, no events that are Muslim friendly, we can create some. If there's no, group or society, then we can create that, inshallah. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you as well, Inaya.
I think definitely if you can't find something, more times a lot of other people will have the same situation. So if you find people with like-minded goals and you come together and you actually do create a safe space, then others will join. And I think that's really powerful. I think that's one thing that I would tell you to do. Another thing is, when we talk about mentoring, there's different ways that you can mentor. Obviously, there's career-oriented mentoring. There's people that you'd go to when you want to like scale up or when you want to climb the corporate ladder and all that. Oh, I hate saying climb the corporate ladder. Tech over corporate any day, guys. Shivers. I've looked at some corporate spaces and it scares me, honestly. But when it comes to mentoring, I think we should look at our network in different ways, So we've got strong links, such as your parents, such as your friends, such as your family, those that will comfort you when you need it most. So perhaps if you've had a bad day, you'd go to them and you'd turn to them saying, guys, this happened, a little rant session, FaceTime, all of that. But then you can also reach out to your weak links. So people that you'd say hi to on the street or people that you might have on LinkedIn. And there's so much power within weak links and reaching out to your weak links. I think if you're in a position of where, for example, I'm in data analytics, I don't want to just network with data analysts. I want to network with a bunch of different people in different fields. I love talking to different people. And I think when you're passionate about something, you can really tell. Because people will get overexcited and they'll just keep going on when they're talking about a certain topic, like Marvel or whatever. I think finding shared interests or shared vulnerabilities and using that as a starting point to network it's a really easy way to get into things.
You know what, Inaya, like we hear it so much, like network is network. What does that mean? And you've given us a really practical method to do that, right? That's really, really pertinent advice. Yeah,
and again, like networking, it looks different. It looks different all the time. This in itself is networking. You can talk to the person next to you. That's you forming a network. That's you having, an opportunity to network. And subhanAllah, I think we should keep having these spaces, especially when we're all Muslims, we're all brothers and sisters here. It's so easy for us to speak about experiences that we've had that are the same. And again, people have gone through the things that you might have. So having somebody that's maybe like one step ahead of where you want to be to discuss things with you is really important and powerful to me. So yeah, I'd recommend doing that.
And as was mentioned in the opening, you don't know which connection down the line, 10 years, you might be opening up to a free venue, sponsored, but venue in Mayfair, subhanAllah, such a beautiful thing. Just to, inshallah, just a few more, have we got a bit of time? Have we got a bit of time? 10 minutes? A minute? Questions, I guess, isn't it? So, yeah, thank you so very much to the incredible panel. Jazakumullahu khairan. So, inshallah, we're going to open up for questions. Any questions?
We don't have time for questions, but you can catch the panellists who'll be sticking around, I'm sure. If not, you can obviously find them on social media. Thank you so much, Mohamed, for hosting, and thank you guys, Jazakallah khair, for speaking on the panel.
Jazakallah khair, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Add us on LinkedIn as well. That's a form of networking.
Exactly.
She knows.
Jazakallah khair, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, before I let you all loose, this panel was absolutely incredible. Some of these guys, I've actually been witnessing their journeys over the last couple of years. I've seen them progress, and honestly, it's really emotional to see how far they've come. Then there's people like Inaya, starting out, 18 years old, mashallah, with great confidence. I'm really excited to just see how far they will all go.